literature. Y'all have seen me in class. This is the book for our project. It's about Things Fall Apart, and by this guy. I do not know how to say his name. Chinua Achebe. I don't know. But for my visual, I have created a drawing, and it's not the best. Let me just warn you, it's not the best. But I have put a lot of thought into this. So what we have here is we start off with how the Igbo, I think that's what you say, the Igbo tribe, or well, the tribe within the story, starts off, as their own customs. You have the woman serving the man, the children, and the man is seen as the alpha, the one who's doing the manly tasks such as hunting, and in this case of the story, they could only harvest manly crops such as yams, and the women were like done stuff like corn and I don't know. There was crops for males and females, so they had their own gender roles and their own things in their own culture and own traditions. Like no one thought anything bad about it. They just did it and they lived with it, and that's how things went. They had their own traditions, their religion. They were very religious. They had their religion, which I don't know to this moment what kind of religion it was. But it was something, I would relate it to mythology. They had their own goddesses and gods for certain things. They had a goddess for earth, they had a god for fire and stuff like that. And one thing I remember is they had their shrines, and that they would never kill a certain kind of snake because it was a reincarnation of a certain god. And so if they did it, they had to do a bunch of stuff to like repay the gods or ask for forgiveness. So this is how it starts off. And then in the middle, here's when Mr. Brown, the priest, and his missionaries started coming in. So you see how back here, like you see how it's like cave painting kind of style? Well, in this way, like each part, each little slot is made this way because it shows from past to present. So dating back to the past, you see how in the past things are blurry? So that's why I didn't put much detail to it. It's just quick and easy, no details, no color. That's how you remember. You don't remember the details, you just remember actions. And so here in the middle, this is where, like I mentioned, Mr. Brown starts coming in, and he starts, well, not certainly like attacking the people, but trying to convert them. So what they do, or what has been mentioned in the book, is that they have killed the snake, the pharaoh, I think it was called the pharaoh snake, something like that, which they thought it was bad, and they also threatened to burn their shrines, which in this case they got offended. They got offended, but in the end they did not burn the shrines, but they did threaten them. And then some people actually went from this to this. So you see how in here they have long hair, and it was mentioned in the story that they had long hair and they refused to cut it because it was against what their gods believed in. So here you see even the men had long hair, or at least I try to make it look like that. And over here, you see how there's like more details compared to this. I mean, it's not the best, but there's more details to it, and there's also color. And over here, you start seeing, the clothes, the facial expressions, and on this guy, I actually made his hair short compared to the long hair that these people had. And then down here is what I made a representation of the current time, or what would like basically happen after the story ended, or like in my opinion how the story would have continued. So like now, relating to this book, it's a way of, is a story of the past, somewhat story of the past of this man's experience. So going back here and tracing back, you see how like I'm relating this to memories. If you think further back, you think the blurrier things are, that's why I'm starting here as blurry, and here it's getting more detailed. In here in the current time, it's more detailed, there's more colors, and it's fairly different from what's up here. From this part, like I said, it's from the present time, or like an era that we typically remember. Something like we can easily remember the day, the time, names, certain things like that. For this one, I try to draw Harriet Tubman. Everybody knows Harriet Tubman. And over here, I try to draw the lady comparing it back to over here, in here. So you see how this part of her hair is straightened and colored and dyed, dyed, compared to this one which is curly and short. Well, I try to compare it to two different halves. Basically, in this culture, or well, in this society, a lot of African Americans, they have changed their style compared to here and here. And this is somewhat like assimilation. This is what I'm trying to get to. Assimilation from how this religion did all this and they changed people from this to this has now become this. So you no longer, or not as often, see people like this in our society at least. Now, in other parts of Africa, you may still see people who are still with their traditions and cultures. But in the United States, we see people like this. You see Harriet Tubman, you see teenage girls, just typical people who just compare to us. And that's what I'm trying to say, the assimilation between how this religion, from threatening people to changing people, has drastically changed them from being this. A lot of African Americans do not like their hair being natural. From what I know, I have a friend who would rather wear dye her hair, get a perm. She would get it braided, but she would not like it like this. And also I have a manager that worked with her, and she loved having her hair like this. She braided it different colors, but she would refuse to have it like this, and she would keep it short just so it wouldn't be a mess. But yet again, this is how people back then, they embraced their hair, they embraced their culture, and seeing someone cut their hair like this is something that they would see as horrible. But that's what I'm trying to get to. This is how people have changed and the different opinions. After the story, people have been like this. Harriet Tubman, you see people now, they have gotten their civil rights, thankfully, after fighting for so long, and slavery also. So people turned from religious, they got their religious aspect, and some were saved, while others were taken down to ships and exported into slavery. But hopefully y'all understood my whole visual, and hopefully y'all understand my thinking